As it was said, I'm Elvira Hadžibegović, and I'm honored to be a representative of the ECEC Network, or European Civic Educational Collaborative Network. The ECEC Network brings together organizations from Slovakia, Montenegro, the Czech Republic, the United Kingdom, Portugal, and Spain, united by the commitment to advancing civic education as a foundation of democratic society. NECE and ECEC have been working together since the Tirana Festival, and we are very, very glad to continue this collaboration through today's lab. The starting point of our collaboration is a shared recognition. What is the recognition? Is that the civic education is facing both renewed urgency and ongoing ambiguity. While civic education is present in many policy frameworks and school curricula, its implementation, impact, and purpose vary significantly across contexts. Our aim as a network is not to prescribe a single model. Rather, we work to articulate the shared conceptual foundation that recognize the complexity of civic education, particularly on non-formal educational settings where innovation and flexibility are often strongest. The ECEC network work is grounded in the idea of whole child development. That's why we have our collaborators with Porticus. This approach emphasizes that civic education must address not only knowledge and skills, but also values, attitudes, and behaviors. It recognizes that active citizenship is cultivated through experiences, reflection, and participation, not only instruction. Together, we are working to develop a shared framework for understanding civic education in 21st century Europe, identifying and showcasing transformative practices that exemplify this framework, and design practical tools such as the rubric we will explore today to support assessment and reflection, and to engage with both academia and policy community to ensure that this work contributes to the real systems change. The concept of transformative experience is central to our work. While not always easy to define, we understand a transformative civic experience as one that leads to fundamental change at the personal, epistemic, and communal level. These experiences might involve a shift in a perceptive, new forms of engagement, or a deeper sense of belonging and agency. They are by nature difficult to reduce to outcomes and outputs, and this is why we must examine them carefully. Today's session brings this work into practice. We will hear from the researchers and practitioners who are actively working to create such experiences in policy, education, and youth engagement. We will also invite you to reflect on your own experiences and to test and share framework for understanding and evaluating transformation in civic education. This is not simply a theoretical conversation, it's a part of a larger effort to clarify what quality looks like in civic education and how we can support and scale it reasonably across diverse European contexts. Thank you again for being part of this learning process. And before we begin, I would like to introduce, I will ask now Livia maybe to share into the chat room our Padlet link, or I will share it later on. We prepared all the materials on one place, and we would like to ask you to interact with us there, ask questions, share reflection, and explore the resources that we prepared for you. It is also where we will collect inputs and continues the exchange after the session. Also, if what we share today resonates with you in your work, I would like to hear from you. We are warmly invited to leave your contact details in the Zoom chat or in the Padlet chat or even in the Mentimeter chat, and we will reach out after the session to continue conversation and explore potential collaboration. Now, to ground us in the shared framework that support our work and this work of ECEC, I'm pleased to hand over to the Professor Andrew Peterson. Andrew is Professor of Character and Citizenship in Education in the UK and a key contributor to the ECEC network. Andrew will present the educational guide developed by the network, a resource designed to help educators and organizations better understand, plan, and assess transformative civic education, civic experiences in non-formal spaces. Andrew, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Elvira. So I will just share my screen and the slides. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Elvira, thank you for the kind introduction. I have 5 minutes to go through this guide. I'm conscious not to eat into time for other speakers, so I'll give just a sort of whistle-stop tour of the guide that we've put together as part of our work on the European Civic Education Collaborative Network. The guide is called Transformative Civic Experiences in Non-Formal Education and stands as hopefully a useful practical guide for educators. The guide was put together by the team based on the work and activities of the network over a long period of time. So we've used those our knowledge, our experiences, but also the work of the network and our conversations and our work within the network to form this guide. So I guess we should say what we consider a transformative civic experience to be. Well, firstly, that we wanted to focus on this word transformative to make clear that civic education and civic experiences, including within non-formal spaces, serves to form and inform, but also hopefully and potentially transform people's lives, whether that's the lives of young people who are engaged in civic experiences or those that they are engaged with as well. So the definition that we've used in the guide is that transformative experiences in civic education are events, processes, experiences, relationships, and actions that have a substantial impact, leading to fundamental change for citizens within civic communities. And we've identified within the guide different forms of transformative change. So the epistemic, something new and positive is learned by citizens and by communities that would not have been possible without the event, process, experience, relationships, and actions that have occurred. The personal, the beliefs, interests, priorities, identities, and commitments of those involved are positively altered as a direct result of the event, process, experience, and relationships, and the communal. So the lived experiences of a specific community or of communities are altered as a direct result of the event, the process, the experience, the relationships, and the actions. Don't have time, as I've said, to go through all the conceptual underpinnings and every feature of the guide, but just wanted to highlight that the guide rests on the conceptual underpinnings of the document that the network put together, a shared vision on civic education that you'll be able to access and read. It's available online on the network's web pages, and there are 5 sort of clues, as we've called them, within the guide that provide those conceptual underpinnings or form those conceptual underpinnings, such as the fact, for example, just to pick one because of time, number 2 there, that civic education is fundamental for an integral and holistic education for all children, young people, and indeed perhaps adults as well. The guide sets out, as well as those conceptual underpinnings and what we consider a transformative education to be, ways in which that education might be possible to make transformative civic experiences possible for people, young people in particular. So we have 2 steps. I'll focus on the first steps, which is planning and organising, some key considerations. And the guide sets out there what we consider to be the key considerations based on our experiences, the work of the networks, those transformative experiences that we've collated and engaged with and really sought to define, well, what makes a transformative experience throughout the work of the network in non-formal educational spaces. And as it says in the top left-hand corner of the slide there, these are not intended as an exhaustive list, but hopefully to offer clarity about these considerations in the collective experience of those involved within the network we think are or is of paramount importance. So question like the purposes, the duration, but which theoretical framework and pedagogical ideas underpin the experience. So they're all set out within the guide. And then we have the second steps, which is about evaluating transformative experiences. And I'll pause there because later on, colleague Juan Louis will be talking about that sort of evaluation and the rubric that we've developed and is included within the guide. So a very snapshot indication of what the guide covers. Hopefully I've kept to time, and I'll hand back over to yourself, Elvira, and stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you for being on time. So without further ado, I would like then to hand it over to my colleague, Juan Fuentes. It's provide a structural way for educators and practitioners to reflect on and assess their work across key dimensions on the matrix that Juan Luis will present, just a rubric that Juan Luis will present just now. And I would like to say that Professor Juan Fuentes is working as a Vice Dean of International Relationship at the Faculty of Education, University of Madrid, and one of the lead researchers behind the rubric development. So Juan Luis, the screen is yours. We are so eager to hear about rubric now. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvira. Well, I would like to continue with the presentation of Andrew, in which we would like to focus also in a practical issue, which is as the rest of the manual. But in that case, we would like to propose a kind of tool in order to evaluate civic transformative experiences. This is a way to connect this theoretical framework with the practical action, with the professional development of civic education. We have included in this rubric 10 different dimensions. We won't have time to explain all of them here, but we propose also to evaluate these 10 dimensions in 3 different levels. The first one is the basic level, the second one is the medium, and the third one is the advanced. Something that we would like to recommend is not to expect to reach the higher level the first time we develop a civic education or transformative experience, because we have proposed different levels in order to see in which level are we and what are the possibilities, which are the potential dimensions that we can improve, or which are the characteristics of my project. Actually, a rubric in which different dimensions are identified, it is also possible to distinguish a project from other different projects, and to see which one is aiming different goals and which one would like to pay attention to another specific issue. So in that case, as you can see here, we have identified the first one, which is the impact scope. This is an important thing related with the characteristic of the transformative experience. The second one is more related with the idea of education, in which we promote a personal development. What kind of aspect of the personal development are we promoting? The third one is focusing on the idea of the community. What kind of collective and democratic participation are we promoting with our experience? Then we continue with the idea of the common good, which is especially important today, considering the polarized world in which we are living. Number 5 is the collaboration networks, taking into account that we cannot promote a civic education project just alone, or maybe with our own organization, but we need others. We need other organizations, other NGOs, other associations, other institutions, etc., different agents, different social agents to promote a civic project. Which are the dimensions of the civic engagement? We can identify different levels of civic engagement, taking into account our time, our moment in life, our capabilities, etc. Also, it is important to distinguish and to specify which is the civic content that we are promoting. We can identify many different areas in which we locate our project. Also, it is also important, at the same time, it is quite difficult to evaluate the results or the process or different indicators in our project, but it is also important to have evidences of which is the deep impact of our project in the society. Also, even we can discuss it, this is not one of the most important things, but the duration of the experience, it is not just something that we have done in a specific moment, isolated from the narratives of the lives of the people that is participating in the project. So we need to see if this is something that we do just for a month or for a year, or this is a long project, etc. And finally, and that could be one of the last ideas that, or the modern ideas, or something that is transforming the way the social movements are adopting today, is the digital dimension of the civic education project. And last, we would like also to contribute with a specific way to evaluate this kind of projects. It's a graphic idea in which we can show or we can identify which are the main areas in which we can improve, or which are the potential of our project. And also we can compare different projects. The idea of comparison is not just to see who is better or which is the best project, but to identify which are the areas that we can improve, or which project could be more appropriate to work in a specific, for a specific problem, for a specific necessity, or in a specific community. And that's it. Thank you very much. We are, of course, open to suggestions, to comments, and to collaborate with you if you are interested in this kind of tool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Thank you so much for this rubric. And please do stay with me. I will need your support throughout the workshop, as now we will hear 2 inspiring practices, but also after each of them, we will then do the little testing of the rubric mode, and that will be done on 3 specific area out of these 10 that Juan Luis was just presenting to you right now. So bear with me and keep your phones near you, as we will need it at some point. Without further ado, and Fernanda, you can start sharing and start maneuvering sharing the screen. I would like to introduce the History Collab and Fernanda Rain's experience together with Susan Rivers. As I say, now we turn out to the inspiring example of transformative civic education in the context of youth development and democratic renewal. I will just say that Fernanda is historian, strategic and social innovator, while Susan Rivers brings unique lens on psychological and civic innovations deeply grounded in adolescent well-being. Fernanda and Susan, the next 15 minutes are yours. Go for it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll try to make up for last time by speaking fast. So if I'm speaking too quickly, please put something in the chat and say slow down, or wave your hands enthusiastically or warningly so that I slow down. We're really, really excited to be here and to bring a practical example and some additional research to bolster this incredible framework. We are sort of an interesting organization that's set up as an R&D lab for civic learning experiences that came out of a merger of 2 organizations. One of them was a design and research lab coming out of adolescent development and teen-centered design, and the other a systems change organization focused on figuring out how to make all of school deliver experiences in the humanities and in history that truly create this sort of transformational civic impact on young people that we're expecting and that we hope for out of school. And we have been working over the past years together and merged a year ago. And we're so excited to see the tremendous overlap between the ECEC framework and what we've been doing. So we're going to give you a quick overview of sort of the theory and our approach to formative civic experiences, and then share one concrete story about how this came to life in one of the community projects that we did last year. So basically, we approach experiences through the lens of how to create experiences that support young people in developing their full human and civic selves. So we do that on the one hand through imagining what this could look like. We imagine a lot. We think about the future. What would it look like if school were about making this happen in all of the experiences that kids have when they walk in the door until they walk out of school, and think about why is that not the reality today, but that how could we get there? Then we build tools. We actually create learning tools, curriculum, curricular building blocks, learning experiences, together with community partners that we then test to make sure the impact is what we want. Then we partner with community institutions, with museums, with archives, with libraries, with school systems to test, refine in community itself how these can work and how they can work at scale. And then we try to grow with partner organizations that have large networks, so museum networks, school networks, so that when we're designing, we're not scaling school by school or through the academic world alone, but try to scale through organizations like the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, which is a big think tank research institute that has been driving how school is shaped in the US for a very long time. Through this work, we have found that there's sort of a set of experiences that amazing educators do and that have been practiced throughout history in different formats that, taken together, provide a lot of the different skills and experiences that we think of as important milestones to becoming an adult. So if these are 18 experiences that one could or should have by the age of 18 that will help you grow an understanding of who you are as an individual and how you fit into and contribute to your community as a whole. It was interesting. I sat just a week ago with Cara Barbara from NACA, which is a Native American teaching institute and collaborative here in the US. And she was looking at this and said, so much of this resonates with how Indigenous teaching practices are shaped and created. And at the same time, we also map these back to what the ancient Greeks considered as the milestones of growing up as a young person. So it's a fun historic lens on many of these experiences that modernized for the current time are formats of learning experiences that deliver both core skills and mindsets and connect you with community. Some of these look a little bit unusual maybe as a civic experience, but designing a ritual or a festival is an example of a kind of experience where you have to think about, what is my community celebrating? What are we celebrating? How do we create a moral community around a certain set of values that is just as important for civic growth as something that seems more classically civic as organizing a civil discourse on a very contentious topic. Another one that's a little bit of an outlier is, and might cause some questions, is a format for civic solitude. And what this is finding a way to just reflect and review what your own values are, how they're taking shape, what matters to you, why it matters to you. Again, something that has a lot of historic tradition in helping young people find this, whether through religious traditions, philosophical traditions, meditation, being in nature, whatever it is, but the process is one that is essential and can't be skipped. So anyway, these are the 18 models of learning experiences that could be connected with any curriculum. So it's key here that these are not just civics, but they could be in art class, they could be in English class and history class. And we've been taking these as models that you can connect to a project with a community institution, say a museum that wants support from young people in thinking about its tours or thinking about its exhibits and how well they serve a certain part of the community, bringing in young people to create a report or to give feedback to the museum and reimagine what an exhibit could look like is one of these kind of experiences that can hit several of these different experience boxes through one kind of project that allows teens to really grow into an understanding of how they can contribute and how public spaces play a role in shaping a civic identity and a civic culture in a community. Just to think behind these experiences is a lot of social psychology, which is what Susan's expertise is in background. So I feel the historian, as an imposter of introducing these, but Susan will correct me if I go off grid. But an exciting model that has been around since the 80s is Yuri Bronfenbrenner, who in the 1970s and 80s was already thinking about what helps young people thrive. And he was more interested really in early childhood than he was in adolescence. But he created this beautiful model of thriving and of growth in an ecosystemic model and an ecological model, where he looked at how a person develops through different layers of relationships and systems around them. So on the one hand, through immediate relationships of family and friends, then through connections between those ecosystems, so between those relationships, so schools and parents, or church, school, and parents, whatever it is. Then there's the exosystem, the settings that influence their parents and their school. So what's the legal framework around or the regulatory framework around your school system? What's the workplace like for your parents? Then the macro level is with the cultural norms. What's the practices that surround you at a certain time that shape how you experience school? For example, whether there's a huge immigration crackdown and you are growing up in a time of an immigration crackdown where there's a cultural norm around how you feel as someone maybe with an immigration story in your school system. Then obviously there's time, your connection to history, your connection to an imagination of the future, which we often forget in civic experiences, that we come from somewhere and have a place that we can imagine going to. And then finally, a cross-cutting one that Bronfenbrenner didn't have in there yet, but is obviously critical today, which is technology, an instrument that we are constantly have with us as human beings that's connecting us with these different spaces. So when we think about young people in civic thriving and these experiences, we see these different layers and how young people connect in them, and how they are inviting young people into their spaces to find their agency, to find their own role, their own identity, their own purpose, and a sense of belonging, and grow into their full civic self. So when we think about civic self, it's all these layers together, and these layers are growing, helping the young person grow in their full humanity, just so well. Now, the next piece to understand that's really important to us when we think about these experiences and designing them is that you understand that teens have a unique operating system. Unfortunately, adults often don't particularly like teenagers. We can't forget this in civic learning, right? We talk about civics as if this were something that kids that we demand of young people and that they have to do regardless of how they're feeling right now. But at the same time, adolescence is a phase that's really, it's an exciting one, it's a fragile one, but adults often find how teens are showing up to be annoying instead of celebrating the specifically teen attributes as ones that we can grow through civic learning and nurture with civic experiences. So we'll share these out, you'll see more of it, but the point is that this operating system of teens that are creative and socially oriented, full of feelings, looking to take risks, wanting to make a difference, wanting to contribute, wanting to be seen as young people that have something to say, that if they don't experience this in real life experiences, in models, in school, in their communities, they feel they close out, right? They close down, they shut down. And so the degrees of disengagement, mental health crises, anxiety, depression, all of those mental health indicators that we have in our societies today are indicators of the fact that teens don't feel seen, don't feel encouraged, don't feel heard and invited to matter. And so when we're designing civic experiences and learning experiences, we try to center an understanding of teens and how they show up and how they feel, what they're looking for, so that when we're creating experiences, they are asking every young person, regardless of the entry feelings they have coming into it, to see that they actually do matter and that they have a voice. So one prime example is game design is a tool that we use a lot. And a great example that we have is the one with the porcelain child. So I'll hand it to Susan to share this story.
And I will try to be brief. I know we don't have a whole lot of time. We went to Dallas, Texas to work with a group of young people, and we asked them, what do adults need to understand to show up for you, to be there for you and share space with you and do these kinds of civic experiences? Across the course of 24 hours, these young people created 5 different prototypes of games that they wanted to invite adults to play and learn about what the young people really believe is most important for how adults show up for them. Let's see if this works. All right, I'm going to show a little video so you can hear their voices.
So basically, this game is supposed to show how fragile a child and their emotions can be, and how like an adult's words and their actions can hurt and break the child that they're talking to. You grab a scenario, and you have responses that are in your deck that you can choose to respond with. And based on how you respond to the scenario, you either take away from the child or you heal the child.
Noticed that, like, I thought it was gonna have one effect, but then watching it have like two effects, because the people who did have children were like, oh man, what this is something different that I could have said to my child, so I'm gonna say this. Okay. And the adults that didn't have children, they were like, oh yeah, they did something bad, yeah, I'm gonna say this to them. Like they just had, they had a different empathy, because the parents who already like had children and watched them grow up were like, I could have did this different.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Honoring other people's ideas was something that I enjoyed doing, because it's not always easy to work with a lot of people at one time.
Like, we all had to come together about things. We've had disagreements a lot, but it just taught us how to communicate with each other and learn from each other. We all build it off of each other to end up with this amazing game.
To be able to listen to other people's ideas and take it in and implement it into something that you was thinking of and mix it together to get a final product. That's also a big thing that we're going to have to use.
Yeah. It gave me a great idea of what I'd be getting into if I was to do work like this professionally, because me and my brother are part of the artist team, and it was really cool to get the idea of it, because we had initial concepts. You do the concepts, I do the official art. We went through initial concepts, and they gave us feedback, because originally the child was going to be kind of like 1930s children's clothing. He was going to have curly hair and big lashes. But then they said, no, it needs to be more genderly ambiguous, so it's a blank slate for everyone. It's for everyone.
From the experience with them, they gave us an open space. Like, they stepped back, but when we needed them, they stepped forward for us. So that really helped us grow.
There were like a lot of different groups, and even though everyone was doing a different thing, when you put them all together, it created something like this. So even if you don't see, you can't vision the future of it, it'll come together. Just trust the process. Yeah. Trust the process.
So what you saw in that video are the students reflecting on the impact of engaging in this transformative experience. The way both in the design of the co-creation experience, we embedded learning science into that. But in what the young people created, they really enacted that learning science to both engage themselves and to engage the adults around them. Things, for example, like emotions drive learning. Learning is most effective when it matters. You could hear the young people in the video talking about the impact of the experience on how they saw themselves, how they saw each other, and how they were seeing the adults around them. The game itself, too, was shifting how adults were understanding what they need to do to show up for young people, to be there, to be supportive of them, to be there to support their own learning and growing and development, and that the actions adults take does have long-lasting impacts on the young people. So it was actually changing the system around the young people, too, as they invited adults to play. This is one quote of so many from our amazing young people. Porcelain Child helps adults see teens as developing people, not just bigger children or less responsible adults, but that this teen moment in time is important in and of itself, not just because it's a developmental moment in between childhood and adulthood. I'm going to stop there because I know we have lots of content to cover. Excited to hear folks' feedback and what's next year.
Thank you so much, Susanna. And to support deeper reflection on what was just heard, we will now briefly apply the rubric for transformative civic experiences developed by the ECEC Network and explained by Juan just a couple of minutes ago. So I will ask you now to follow the instructions that are on your screen. Sorry if I'm a bit slow with this sharing and everything, but it was a long time since I did Zoom, but the instructions are there. It's usually go to the Mentimeter and then press this code or do the QR code. And then I will open it in another format and also present it so that you will see the first questions. Sorry. And here it is. And here we will, mark, as Juan was saying, mark it.
Elvira, could you share again the code?
Sorry, the code is also here. Yeah, join and Menti.
That's perfect. Thank you.
On the upper of the screen, if you can see it. So just mark it as basic, medium, or advanced. We are marking it 3 dimensions out of 3, so take your time. We are marking impact score, personal aspects involved, and perception of the common good. We do understand that you do not have all the definition and everything in front of you, and we will just hear it. But if you could just based on what you heard, mark it on basic, medium, and advanced level. Once the responses are in, Fernanda and Susan will be invited to reflect, but just a minute to reflect on the results and comment on how their work connect with these 3 areas. Just for a short minute, as we have one more extraordinary transformative experience to hear about, and also we have a little bit surprise for the ending.
Elvira, they ask through the chat if we have to mark on their own experience or on the porcelain child experience. So just to clarify, that is on the experience that Susan and Fernanda just explained to all of us.
Yes, apology for that. We are trying to rush it through the agenda as we are aware of the time just skipping. Fernandez, Susan, when you are ready, you can start maybe short comment. Thank you.
Great. Just very briefly, I love this assessment framework and really appreciating all the feedback here. I think in terms of impact scope, my sense is that I see the ratings as pretty high, which is amazing. I think we're probably still at medium. I think there's potential for large scale impact of this game, this experience that the young people created. But it's still to a pretty tight number of those in the community, those that we met with at South by, and others who are engaging. But I think that we are getting there. In terms of personal aspects involved, we certainly, the young people, developed lots of knowledge, engaged, developed themselves, saw values, things like teamwork, creativity, collaboration, humility. I would say that was pretty advanced for this kind of experience, and I'm seeing that. I think the way I'm interpreting this is correct. I'm seeing that come out. And then perception of the common good. It did want to impact the individuals around, both each other and the adults around them, really for appreciating the magnificent of teens, and really shifting adult behavior, and also how young people really want to meaningfully engage with adults and feel that mutual respect between them. So really appreciating this feedback. I'm glad you saw the promise of it, and excited to learn more from the other projects.
Thank you. I would like to introduce the National Network for Civic Education Brazil and our distinguished speaker, João Tavares, a democracy activist, social entrepreneur, and co-founder of the Rede, or National Network for Civic civic education, also known as Rede. Rede is a remarkable coalition of more than 120 organizations across the Brazil, all working together to strengthen democracy culture through civic education. Their approach combines grassroots action, policy advocacy, and systematic collaboration. But without further ado, and not taking any of more time, I know that we have just 16 minutes left, but I will hand it over to João. João, the floor is yours. Apologies for shortening your introduction.
Hello, Elvira. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here with you. I'm talking from Brazil, so here's morning. So good morning or good afternoon, I don't know exactly for you. I'm gonna be very quick. I just want to talk a little bit what's the problem that we try to solve here in Brazil. So Brazil is the fourth largest democracy in the world, and we have 47 million students, and schools are very important for the future of society. So, and we don't have in Brazil a national policy for civic education. That's what we try to solve in the last few years. It's different from many of your countries, but that's the reality. So I believe that many of you know the ICCS, International Civic and Citizen Education Study. We ranked on the last position on citizenship scale in 2022. That was something that was like a first step to understand that we need to create this policy in Brazil. We also have many historical problems in Brazil. So our political culture in the Economist Democracy Index is not very well ranked. We are on the same level on countries that are named by the same rank as a dictatorship, as Azerbaijan, for instance. And Brazil does not have this national civic education policy because it's kind of a trauma in Brazil. That's something that's important to be brought, because we had a military dictatorship until 1985, and all the political system, they became worried about talking about politics and some versions of democracy in the classroom, because it was used by the people in power to talk about. It was like a nationalist kind of education that was used by the military dictatorship. So we took like 4 years to start discussing this again. As you can see, I'm not going to read this slide. It's here and I can send you after, but it's some kind of political context on Brazil. I think from this slide, the most important part is that why do we exist? So Rede NEC, or Rede Nacional de Educação Cidadã, the National Network for Civic Education, as we call it, was created to establish, advocate for, and maintain a unified agenda for civic education in Brazil, enhancing the development of a democratic culture. So we already mobilized 120 institutions from small NGOs that works in one or a few schools, from the biggest institutions in Brazil as the electoral justice, and we have here in Brazil the National Council for Justice, for instance, that are working very hard to make this happen. And the point is that without a network, they didn't know each other. So our work was to introduce them, to say, hey, let's talk before you want to do something with the Ministry of Education. We have to prepare ourselves before, and we have to have many conversations before by doing our national meetings and the national gatherings, where we have working groups where people discuss very important points and very strategic issues of our civic education agenda in Brazil. So this blue document here, is called Pathways to Universalizing Civic Education in Brazil. In 2024, we delivered it to the Ministry of Education and another 13 right-hand authorities in Brasilia, our capital, demanding as a coalition for the creation of the civic education policy. At the same time, we try to enhance and try to develop this kind of local coalition on civic education that's on Brazilian state of Sergipe. That's the smallest one. So we were there in the schools, learning how to create a civic education agenda inside the schools and how all the other public institutions here in Brazil, like justice course, for instance, they can help students to learn on the structure of the state and how to learn what democracy is about. That's very interesting because as the Ministry of Education of Brazil never entered in this democracy agenda, many public institutions have over the last 40 years. So that's a thing that make us, we have, this is a good thing for Brazilian agenda. So because the students they have like programs for students, like you can be deputy for a week, or you can be councilman for a month, or you can be a young judge, and all these public institutions try to bring people to discuss and to learn about democracy, to foster democratic culture. In September last year, the Ministry of Education, September this year, sorry, 17th September of this year, this was very happy day for us because for the first time in 4 years, Brazil decided to talk about democracy in classrooms. So this is a little bit of what we have done to it, and I just like to highlight our work in Brazilian Congress, because Brazilian Congress has a more radical agenda. Like people from the right wing, they are very afraid of talking about democracy in the classroom. So we have to prove to the Ministry of Education that it was safe to create this program, and we have done it by introducing project of laws. We tried to approve the National Week for Civic Education. It was approved already on the Senate, and it was like there was no opposition to this project. So the ministry understood that they could move forward on creating this national program. This photo here is the last national gathering that we have here. It was 50 days ago, and we have 300 participants from all over the country. We had Sabrina from the Civics was here. She was with us, so it was very nice. And this is a movement that's getting bigger and bigger here, and we can, as a coalition, show to the government that we could show that it was safe to create this policy. So now that the policy is created, we had all the things that we have when you achieve something, like the media, the biggest newspapers in Brazil, they said, oh, now the Ministry of Education is going to teach democracy in schools, it's going to be like this and like that. But I would like to talk very briefly with you about what the program is about. Brazil has 3 levels of government. So the federal level, they don't have the schools. We need to partner with the state and municipal level to bring it to the schools. And we are trying to do this by creating network of teachers, a network of people that work on the secretariats of the secretaries of education here in Brazil. We also we are finishing the framework of knowledge for civic education. So Brazil is going to, for the first time, know, and we can say what civic education for Brazil. That's something new. And we have done it looking also for the international experience. So our contact with many of you were very important for us. And we were happy to bring to this framework also competence on artificial intelligence, digital citizenship, and things like this. That's very important today for the young people to participate in democracy. Here we have our main networking partners and a little describing of how it's going to work. These logos here in the right, they represent the institutions that are helping us to get from the federal level to the local one. So we have here all this kind of public institutions that I mentioned, and Brazil has a very particular ecosystem of these public institutions. So I'm not going to explain exactly to you exactly how it's done. And I think the point is more about this. This is slide from fundraising. Okay, so we are seeking for strategic partners to facilitate systemic change. We say it because we are trying to raise money here in Brazil to implement it. But the point is that we signed a cooperation agreement with the ministry, so our coalition is going to be also the main part of this implementation effort that's going to take years here in Brazil. The goal for the next years is to Brazil have already 16 million students involved in civic education actions, and we estimate that today only 64,000 students are impacted by civic education in Brazil. So it's a very big rise. We know that's a challenge, and we want to do it step by step and in a very orchestrated way with all these institutions and all this ecosystem and between our coalition to do it correctly and the best in the best way possible.
João,
we have here,
Are you ready for maybe to do the metrics now and maybe to evaluate this experience?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, João. So I will share the screen once more. Let's go for it. Menti, and let's try to make it and evaluate this experiences as well. Is this one you will see different from previously? We will have impact scope, we will have civic engagement, and we will have perception of the common good. You go for the same code as you did it previously, but now I'll just change the slide so you will have it a different diagram. So as I say, we are evaluating impact scope, perception of common good, and civic engagement. How does this enable participants to become active, reasonable, responsible citizens? Go on Menti and you start on it. Do you have trouble doing it? No, we have 12 already. Let me just do the light. Yeah, it's working. Okay, sorry about that. João, be ready to comment on it when the most of the participants are already voting. We have now 14 out of 40 votes already in. We are testing the rubric that was made by this networks as a new tool so that we can compare projects, we can compare even our own projects, or this tool can also help us in identifying what is our secret ingredients within our organization or the area, so that why our projects work sometimes doesn't. What is that special ingredients that we have in transformative experiences? Okay, João, the floor is yours. I believe all the results are now in the time that we have is there. Please take the mic.
Thank you, Vera. I'm gonna comment about the civic engagement. I think it's the last explored part of my presentation. And I must confess that it's very hard for us to put all this in words, because we were, most of our coalition, we are from the civic engagement area. There are professionals that work with this for 10, 12, or 20 or 30 years. But when we talk about public policy on education, the things gone more complex, especially in Brazil, that's very big, and we have this 47 million students. So what we are trying to create is a space where every Brazilian child can participate in democracy, and that they can have the opportunity to participate in a project-based learning way. So we want them to go to these public institutions because we think that's a great model on understanding civic education and understanding democracy, is to play these roles, to be a judge for a week or to be a deputy for a month, as I said. We really believe that's something that must be brought together on this implementation effort. And we are very happy that the Ministry of Education, they understand this. They understood, and they create a governance on this program that I didn't mention, but a governance that all these public institutions that are already doing public education, civic education for 20 years, they have a seat, and that's something very important that I learned from our friends from Germany. and they said that the price for civic education is the independence of the public policy. So we try to create something similar in Brazil by creating this governance that will also foster the civic engagement of the students. But I think my time is over, Vira. I would like to thank you, everybody, and it was very nice to be here with you and learn from Fernanda, Susan also. And that's it. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, and we are so looking forward to the further cooperation with you also on that. As I said, and it's like 2:59, so we have 1 more minute, but anyhow, we will go overboard a little bit. I would just like to do a little bit of rounding up and closing remarks very swiftly, but before that, yeah, I would like also to hear if somebody of my team or Juan Luis or Andre Peterson would like to comment a little bit on rubric before my closing remarks. Now it's time for that, or we can hold our peace forever. No, we are holding our peace. Okay, Juan, you had your time. So closing remarks. As we close today at this NECE Campus Session, I want to thank you all for being part of this important and inspiring conversation. Through this session, the ECEC Network shared a practical guide, and you will find it in all the shared folders that we shared with you, to design to support the educators and youth workers in developing transformative civic education experiences in non-formal contexts. A rubric developed collaboratively to help analyze and improve the depth and scope of civic initiatives, and 2 real-world examples from the US and Brazil that help us ground this idea in practice. We began with 3 central questions that have guided our work on that: what is transformative experience in civic education? Why do this experience matter, and how can we make that possible, as described in the guide, and you will find it everywhere in our materials. This is what we propose. All the session materials, including the rubric, guide links, and contact forms, are available on our Padlet. We encourage you to stay connected, interactive, and join the network for this, if this resonates with your own practice. Yep, what is happening and what we have as a little surprise is that we are hosting, and we will have next workshops, and it will be done from 9, 10, and 11 of March of 2026. And let us know if you are interested in joining us in Lisbon. It's going to be in NECE lab. It is a chance to connect in person, share practices, and move from reflection to collaboration. Thank you once again for being part of this shared journey of reflection and transformation.